Joining me now is Senator Matthew Samuda and meteorologist Evan Thompson, both with Jamaica's Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Senator Samuda, I'll start with you because you've been leading the hurricane preparation. What are people and businesses in your country doing to prepare for this monster hurricane?
Well, there's a great deal of anxiety as we've seen the impact of this storm in Barbados, in St. Vincent, and of course in Grenada. So citizens, businesses alike have been putting in place all of their hurricane preparatory steps. So there's a great deal of activity at the supermarkets, great deal of activity at our hardware stores, and people are putting in place the protection mechanisms that we know work. At the government level, we've been focused on clearing major drains right throughout our townships. We've been ensuring that all of our government buildings are indeed protected by way of being boarded up, ensuring that roofs are secure. We're doing what we can, but ultimately we've also been focused on ensuring that citizens have the information. So those who are in low-lying areas, those who are in flood-prone areas, go to any of our 780 plus shelters, because ultimately saving lives is our first priority. Property is second. But it's not our first hurricane, it's not our first tropical storm of sorts, but we are very worried about this one because it is a category 4.
Yeah, exactly. And Mr. Thompson, you serve as the hurricane expert.
Yes.
Describe the current conditions for us, the impact we've already seen in neighbouring islands and the expectations for impact in Jamaica.
Yes, this is something that has come upon us at a time that we really didn't expect this kind of activity. So early in the hurricane season, just before we ended the first month of the season, we already saw a system developing that was entering the Caribbean and picking up the speed in terms of movement, but also the speed in terms of intensity of the system moving into the Eastern Caribbean. So it has been quite something to watch and to be a part of understanding what is really happening here with the changes that are taking place in the climate, whether it's with the variability or the change of the climate. And then, of course, what we're seeing happening in the Eastern Caribbean has really caused us to think about what these systems can really produce, the kinds of storm surge that we experienced, we heard and we saw by video taking place in places like Barbados and Grenada and St. Vincent. We saw the storm surge, we saw the devastation that these countries have been encountering, and it makes us have to stop to consider how will we prepare ourselves to face something like that.
Yeah. And Senator Samuda, you've also, you oversee environment and climate change, as we've been discussing. This is the first Category 5 hurricane on record to make landfall in the Atlantic this early in the season. It's now at Category 4. Talk to us about Jamaica's climate history. Are you surprised to see a storm of this strength in July?
We're all pretty surprised. I mean, we're usually in preparation for end of August, certainly September, and sometimes early to mid-October. So this is unprecedented for us, especially a storm of this strength. Now, the climate scientists will have to do the climate attribution to say how much of it was related to climate change as opposed to a one-in-a-century storm, but we certainly believe that climate change has obviously had a devastating impact on us and certainly on our neighbors in the Caribbean. Ultimately, as many strides as we have made in managing our macroeconomic situation, this underlines the fragility for factors that are outside of our control. Ultimately, climate change is the risk to us. It's a risk to our stability. It's a risk to lives and livelihoods. This is an unprecedented storm, as we can see, and in July and certainly late June, it's really something that we just didn't expect. We're doing our best to prepare, but we have to, see what happens.
Yeah. And Mr. Thompson, just looking at historic hurricanes, Gilbert hit Jamaica in 1988 as a Category 3 storm. Ivan hit in 2004 as a Category 4 storm. How did they compare to Beryl, and how did the island recover back then?
Wow. I was really just starting my meteorological career when Gilbert moved across the island. I was right on the bench there forecasting during the passage of that system. So I wasn't able to see what was happening on the ground until I left my location at the end of all of it and saw the kind of devastation and seeing the total destruction of property, so many houses without roofs. It was really something to behold. And then, of course, moving to 2004 with Hurricane Ivan, we saw a similar picture. Maybe not as much of the island was impacted then, because it was mostly focused on the southern parishes, the southern side of the island, where Gilbert actually affected the entire country. But this one that we're watching, it seems to be following a kind of path that's in between both, where it is at the category, the strength of a Gilbert, but it seems as though it is going to take a path that is more along the southern side of the island, as was Hurricane Ivan. So we're kind of watching it with some kind of trepidation, yes, and trying to see how much we can learn from it, but at the same time preparing our residents to recognize the various hazards that they are likely to face with the storm surge, with the heavy rainfall, with the very strong winds, and of course the kind of landslides that likely will occur afterwards. You know, we really have to prepare ourselves for all these hazards.
Well, we do hope everyone in Jamaica heeds your warnings and listens to authorities. Senator Matthew Samuda, meteorologist, Evan Thompson, appreciate your time today. All the very best as this hurricane makes landfall in Jamaica.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.